Hey ladies and gentlemen, it's Alex Cika here, and today an interview with a licensed professional. We're going to be talking to Fernando David. He is an entrepreneur, he's a realtor, he's a property manager, and he is an Airbnb owner. So we're gonna pick his brain and ask him some questions on what it takes to get started in that Airbnb business. Let's go. Hey there, Fernando, good to see you again. So, question number one, what are your 3 tips when getting started in the Airbnb business?
First off, Alex, let me begin by saying thank you. Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure being on here with you today. So to answer your question of what are my 3 tips that I recommend for someone starting a short-term rental business, or commonly known as an Airbnb business, the first one, and it's probably the most important component to a short-term rental business, and that is establishing a cleaning team. The cleaning component to the Airbnb business is critical. The business of Airbnb is review driven. So you need to make sure that your cleaners understand the difference between simply cleaning a residential home and cleaning an Airbnb business, and the presentation that your cleaners need to have or do so that you create a very good first impression when a guest walks into your property. This component is so important that when I created my company and I finally found a cleaning company that understood what it takes to clean a short-term rental business, I bought the company. That's how important that is, okay? So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is creating systems or having operating software to help you manage the business, okay? This is extremely important as well, because if you want to grow, you have to have systems in place. I'm sure you heard this before, and this is a critical mistake that many new entrepreneurs, whether they're realtors, Airbnb operators, a mom and pop store, whatever it is, whatever business you're operating, if you don't have systems, it's very difficult to grow, and you're really setting yourself up for failure. So make sure you have systems in place, and today is very easy because there's plenty of operating software out there that'll help you manage your property so that your operation side of the house becomes very efficient and it allows you to scale quickly. So that's your tip number 2. Tip number 3, and this is another very important component, is understanding the platforms. I highly recommend that you pick a platform such as Airbnb because it's probably the most popular. And before you add another channel, make sure you master that platform. Understand what all the ins and outs of that platform are. And more importantly, understand how to manipulate their SEO so when someone does a search, your listing is the first one they see. So that's tip number 3.
Okay, that should be very helpful information for some aspiring business starters. Okay, question number 2. How frequent should you change your rental rates on these units or homes?
That's a very good question, Alex. And you should do it often. Let me explain what I mean by that. And it goes back to mastering the platforms, right? There's a lot of operating softwares out there that'll help you, and even Airbnb, for example, has what's called smart pricing, that'll help you price your listings. Now, I use it as a guide, but I don't use it exclusively. Just like when you're doing, if you're a realtor, just like when you're doing comps, right, to learn how to properly list your property, it's the same thing in an Airbnb business. But there's some differences. And here's what I mean by that. And it takes a lot of hard work or a lot of work to identify how you should price it. But I am constantly changing my rates. And the reason being is because the software that I use is tied into the hotel industry. And it tells me what the occupancy rates are for the hotels. So for example, if I have a property next to a Marriott in Fort Lauderdale, which I do, if I know that Marriott is operating at 95 to 100% occupancy, and I know the rates are high, I'm going to do the same thing to my listing. I'm going to increase the rates. In addition, we have lots of special events. Whenever a special event is coming, for those particular days, I'm going to adjust the rates. I'm going to give you an example. Tortuga, for those that don't know, is a music festival that happens in Fort Lauderdale. It's extremely popular. During months before Tortuga comes into effect, in fact, oftentimes, people that are hardcore Tortuga fans, they'll book a hotel or a Airbnb a year in advance. But knowing that, right, if you know that an event's coming up and you know the event is popular, make sure you increase your rates and so that you take advantage of the high occupancy during that period of time. So you should constantly be looking as to when you should increase your rates and when you should lower your rates, because it is not stagnant. And if you set up your listing with a rate and just leave it there, you're making a big mistake.
Great interview. Thank you so much, Fernando. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All of Fernando's information will be at the tail end of this video, so feel free to reach out to him directly if you have any other questions. We're always here for you, and until next time, have a good one.
I hope these tips were useful, or hope this information were useful. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh yeah, one more thing. If you haven't already subscribed, do it right now.